Yeah. Any last words? Okay, so there was another kind of big news piece. There was a piece that got like 170 comments about Star Wars, and it has to do with the Star Wars: The Last Jedi hate being amplified by Russian trolls. So the this was a paper written by Dr. Morton Bay from the University of Southern California, and pretty much here's what he said in his abstract. He said, actually, he said many things, but I don't want to read the whole thing. I just realized it'd be really dry. But pretty much what it was is he made a study, and based on that study, found that a lot of the negative people, who made comments were potentially Russian trolls, or those who had a goal to create dissatisfaction within like the U.S. in some way. Actually, I'll go ahead and read it because he says it way better than me. He said, persuading voters of this narrative remains a strategic goal for the U.S. alt-right movement as well as the Russian Federation. The result of the study showed that among those who addressed The Last Jedi director Rian Johnson directly on Twitter to express their dissatisfaction, more than half are bots, troll/sock puppets, or political activists using the debate to propagate political messages supporting extreme right-wing causes and the discrimination of gender, race, or sexuality. A number of these users appear to be Russian trolls. The paper concludes that while it is only a minority of Twitter accounts that tweet negatively about The Last Jedi, organize attempts at politicizing the pop culture discourse on social media for strategic purposes are significant enough that users should be made aware of these measures so they can act accordingly. And they pretty much hypothesize that the reason is just to create to split Americans in another way in addition to how America is split politically now. But I think it's worth mentioning how the study was conducted, because it was actually pretty limited. So pretty much what they did is they looked at all of the tweets that were tweeted directly at Rian Johnson, the director of Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and that was 1,270, and then they eliminated all the duplicates. So basically anyone who tweeted more than once. So that reduced them down to 967 users. And from there, he categorized their tweets into negative, positive, or neutral. And of those negative users that he found, of which there was like 206 accounts that were deemed negative, 50% of those users were motivated by political agenda or potentially not even human. And of that number, there were 16 that appeared to be Russian trolls. So 16 out of the 206 negative, which is a smaller fraction of the 967 users. But yeah, apparently they made enough of a splash for this paper to be written. But yeah, people have very strong feelings about this. People got really upset about it. But I'll start with you, Chris. Where do you land on this whole
Sure.
thing? How do you feel?
Well, I mean, I want to be careful not to relitigate The Last Jedi here and get totally off
Well, first of
off
all,
off
where do you stand
off
on The
base.
Last Jedi?
Here's here's okay. Well, my feelings for The Last Jedi are complicated. When I saw it, I was impressed by it. I felt it was a home run. And then I thought, and then I, but given time, I was curious how some stuff in it would age, particularly obviously the Canto Bight sequence and some other pieces. I've seen it a couple times since, and I have grown to have some issues with some of the choices in it. I think that's fair to say. Like, I don't think it's a perfect film. It's not a perfect Star Wars film. There's a lot I like in it, and there's some stuff that I don't love in it. Right. So just to avoid getting into all the stuff that maybe I don't like about it, and focus on this. The media, okay, like I don't want to, I just have to figure out how to get into this without getting off on a political tangent, but it's the internet, right? So of course I believe there's some shenanigans go on, particularly when you have a franchise as big as Star Wars and you have a platform as big as Twitter, and you do have a climate that seems to be divided along political lines. I will say, though, that the media seems to have a stake in this conflict, whether it's for business reasons or for ideological reasons. It seems to me that they're more than happy to continually inflame the narrative around The Last Jedi. And they have been running this really harsh narrative against the fan community, basically saying that anyone who likes The Last Jedi is a bigot, or like doesn't like it because they're against women's rights, or they don't want women in Star Wars or something like that. I've always been a little bit iffy on that narrative, because you just have to talk to people in real life to know that some people really liked The Last Jedi and thought it was very powerful, and some people have mixed feelings about the movie. You just have to talk to people at your work, or just casual Star Wars fans, let's say, and not the hardcore fans. Or spend 10 minutes on a Star Wars forum and see people talking about The Last Jedi and being very pro Last Jedi, being very negative Last Jedi. So the Russian bot thing seems a little conspiratorial, but let's say that it's true. And this is something I think the media are missing, if Russian trolls amplified the hate, particularly with the hateful rhetoric towards, let's say, minorities or women, then doesn't that kill the media's narrative that there's all these bigoted Star Wars fans? Because if it was all bots and trolls and it wasn't actual people, then the people who are have misgivings about Last Jedi weren't the bigots. It was these bots or whatever. So I don't know. I just feel really conflicted about it. Like, it doesn't seem like a huge sample, so it doesn't seem like it would really affect a lot. But it seems to me like if it was all driven by bots, then where are all these hateful Star Wars fans?
It's funny
that I keep getting told about.
Ironically enough, I can't count how many comments were like, "I'm a human and I hate it." It's like they're basically going against that whole thing. But yeah, that's a really good point. What do you think, Fox? Oh, sorry, Nick, you go next.
Well, I was just gonna comment on, you're talking about Star Wars forums, and we have an entire channel on our Slack group called The Last Jedi. We've been discussing the movie nonstop all these months later.
You mean you say these people in the media have a vested interest in keeping the conversation going? The reason I have a vested interest is I need to prove these haters that they're wrong. That's my only vested interest that I have.
Oh, Jammer, that's the other thing I was going to say. Sorry to interrupt. Is that I think the critics, and again, I consider myself one of them. I came out of the screening of Last Jedi and I was real hyped about it. Mm-hmm. And I was shocked the next morning to find that it was divisive, and that a lot of my friends who saw it were not unsure about it. I thought it took big swings. I thought it did things differently. I thought that's what we all wanted from Star Wars. But as I said, after seeing it again, there's some things that rubbed me the wrong way. But the thing is, the media came out so strong. Critics came out so strongly in favor of Last Jedi that I feel like they need to double down. Because what are they going to do? Like, say, oh, maybe you guys were right, it's not perfect.
I mean, don't we do that all the time? I feel like critics do that all the time.
Yes.
They change their opinion all the time.
They haven't changed their opinion on Last Jedi, though.
That's because it's a fucking great movie. I'm just kidding. I mean, I really love the movie.
I hear you.
I love the movie.
You,
it's not perfect, but I still think it's one of the stronger ones. And I'm going to be doing a segment with our own Kyle Malone where we rank our Star Wars movies, and you will get to hear my thoughts on it as if you don't know them already. But Fox, we haven't heard from you yet. What do you think about this whole thing?
Yeah, I the academic in me keeps looking at that small sample size and considering the fact that there are a lot of other elements at plays, there are a lot of other forums, there are a lot of other places, I mean, even LRM, where you saw yourself a completely distinctive discussion that you probably say was biased one way or the other. And I'm with you, Jammer, that I actually really loved Last Jedi, and I really appreciate it. I think I'm taking a different approach to this, and then I think about the fact that the people who I find really despise Last Jedi, they like to label themselves as Star Wars purists. They're the people who really have liked Star Wars for years, and they say things like, oh, it's not my Luke Skywalker, things like that. What I think is fascinating is that all of this rhetoric and all of these news stories, whether it's, about how divisive it is or, again, these Russian trolls or things like that, it's getting people who are not usually interested or haven't been as interested in Star Wars to go see the movie to make their own decisions. And what I think is fascinating about that is that anecdotally, the people who haven't been as close to the source material, haven't, read the EU or things like that, they're the ones who actually like Last Jedi the most. I mean, Last Jedi has the most Blu-ray sales, I think, of the year by far already, and I think a lot of that is because of the buzz. It sort of goes back to that whole idea that any publicity is good publicity. So that's sort of an interesting sort of, I think, ripple effect of this, that the fact that it's getting such negative publicity in a certain degree is causing people who probably are going to like it more to watch it. So I don't know. That's sort of my take on it.
And when I heard the story, like more than thinking about dividing Americans or whatever the deal is, I thought like that's in a way that's corporate, like espionage isn't the right word. Corporate, it's like an attack in a way where it's like we're gonna cost Disney a bunch of money, in the same way the Sony hack cost Sony a bunch of money. You know, like it's a I can't. I knew that was. I thought the term when I read the article, like, yeah, corporate something. But yeah, almost think of it more in that way, where it's like, oh, are these attacks just meant to kind of hurt Disney? Because like maybe it did hurt the gross at the theater, even though now I agree that it's become the most talked about Star Wars movie, which I think is one of the reasons it is continuing to sell. And like from my personal experience, I'm one of those who liked it. It's my fourth favorite Star Wars movie. But like, and that's the thing, like you see a lot of haters online, like in our LRM group even, but I don't know that many people in person who didn't like it. Like, and I work at a movie theater, all the employees love it.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of weird. Like, my friends love it who are Star Wars. I would consider myself a Star Wars purist, and I loved it. Like, I love the movies, but I don't feel like I own them.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, I love Star Wars. I grew up, we all kind of grew up with Star Wars, for me at least particular. I had it on VHS and then went to theaters to see the special editions and then, watched the other ones in theaters. And I kind of fell out of love with it after the Attack of the Clones because that was just a pile of shit. It is my least favorite Star Wars movie, for the record.
Agreed.
And I kind of fell back in with Revenge of the Sith just from a fan service point of view, but even that was short-lived because it was only from a fan service point of view. I indulged in some of the novels, and then kind of just fell out of it because Jason was a stupid fucking name for a Jedi, like Jacen. Did not like that. Stopped reading that. And not a purist at all. I'm more of a fan of taking risks with stories and trying things. You'll notice this with me as when I review things is if there's a director that takes a big swing, even if they don't land it, I give them a lot of respect for trying bold things. It's why I like the Wachowskis. It's why I like Zack Snyder, because they take risks, even if they fumble the entire way. And I think The Last Jedi took some major risks, and I actually think it did a really good job of executing most of them. Canto Bight, I could see why people have problems with that. I could see why people have problems with Holdo not telling things. But everything else, I think, is pretty fucking gold. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Jammer, I'm with you. And the two things you mentioned are kind of my biggest pet peeves about the movie. And so, like, to me, movies that take big swings and stumble, I think you're exactly right. Those are the movies that get me jazzed these days as well. So, like, in retrospect, this whole Last Jedi thing, I mean, I don't know how we put it to bed, but, it seems like people are going to be talking about this movie for a long time. And the last piece that I'll just bring up is, this is another thing that people have a lot of passionate opinions about is and maybe this is just the reality of social media, but my feeling is some of the creatives at Lucasfilm need to kind of get out of their own way with this stuff. Like Rian Johnson, commenting on this Russian troll thing. It's like,
oh, did he comment? What'd he say?
I thought he tweeted about it. I thought he tweeted it out. I thought
he
that was
retweeted it, and he actually referenced it before it came out a few weeks ago.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And we've seen some of the Star Wars authors like Check Wendig, and people kind of like coming out against Star Wars quote Star Wars fans, like whether you're a hater or whether you're a purist or whether you're whatever. I'm like, when everyone was shitting on Justice League, I don't remember Zack Snyder lashing out at people. Wow. And I don't remember him getting upset on Twitter at everybody and telling them that they're bad fans and all this stuff. I think that for whatever reason, people working on Star Wars right now are very touchy, and
like John Kasdan.
Yeah,
he's always lashing out at solo haters.
Yeah, and so like maybe this is just the era we're in, right? But I think that's also not helping some of the raw feelings, let's say, from Star Wars fans who didn't particularly like The Last Jedi or the direction Star Wars has been going, which I will say I'm not necessarily one of, even though it seems like I'm advocating for those people right now. Mm-hmm. It's just what I've been noticing that seems to inflame this conversation every few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, people, they as Nick mentioned, they have a sense of ownership. They feel like they know better. There was that era. I forget what YouTuber this is, but there was this great 30-minute essay about how people grew up loving it, and then there was the period where there was nothing other than like the books and comics or whatever. So they really grew attached to it, and then the new ones came, and then they realized, well, fucking George Lucas is messing it up. I know better because I know all of this stuff that is in the books that I've read. So I know better than him, and I know better than all the creators. And pretty much that continued with this one. And now at this point, they've been seasoned to pretty much assume that they know better than anyone who's creating because they know this material better than anyone else. And therefore, anything that doesn't measure up to what they know or what they envisioned already is not good. Obviously, it's not everybody, but I think that is some fans.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
And going back to the Twitter point real quick, like Ron Howard, meanwhile, was the most gracious guy in the world.
Oh, that guy knows how to play ball.
I know people would tweet at him how much they hate it, and he'd be like, "I'm sorry about."
Did he
that.
say
Like,
thank you for seeing
hard.
it?
He always says thank you for seeing it.
Yeah.
It's like, at least he gave it a shot, man. Like, thanks.
I mean, I think I respect Solo. It's not one of my favorites by any stretch. I think it did not justify its existence. I don't get why we needed it. At the end of it, I was like, well, that was fun. And then I turned to my wife and I was like, why are we in a theater? I don't understand how I got here. And I don't remember why I sat here or what I watched. So yeah, I just forgot about it immediately. But it was fun. I think it would have been better not being a Solo movie, but I think I've said that several times already. Mm-hmm. Any last words about this Russian situation?
Of course, we got 170 comments.
Yeah.
It's political and it's Star Wars.
To be fair, I was looking at it, and I feel like two people were driving most of the conversations. That was Reaper of Souls and Mucking Kebab, who had like 90 separate comments between the two of them. And it's still going on right now as I go. As I'm sitting here, there's a new reply that popped up right now. So they're having fun. Good for them.
Yeah, that seems to happen on most of our political stories, is two people just start attacking each other, and that's most of the comments.
Yeah. All right, so moving on away from...